welcome everybody to another episode of Dave's Book Report. I believe this is the fourth episode, and I know I've been promising it to you, and it is happening. Well, I haven't so much as read books this past couple of months, but I have listened to a lot of audiobooks. Reason why is because a lot of these books I wasn't really interested in actually taking my time to read, but I really wanted to since the movies were coming, the respective movies were coming out, I wanted to see what these movies were about, and some of these looked interesting, so I decided to read the books or listen to the audiobooks. This Dave's Book Report is not only going to be dealing with books that I've read, it'll also be dealing with comic books that I've read, or audiobooks, or whatever the case may be. You like my whole little book section here? I worked on it. You can even see the little Batman symbol here for my other show, Dave's Corner. All right, so without further ado, I want to start off with the first book series that I decided to listen to, which I wasn't really too keen on, but at the same time, I was kind of keen on. Funny how that works. Well, the movie with Robert Downey Jr. was coming out called Dolittle, and obviously a lot of people were like, "Wait a minute, is that based off of the Eddie Murphy movies?" No, that's why I always say do your research, look at the history. Dr. Dolittle from Eddie Murphy's version is a remake of an old film that was made in the 40s or 50s, called Dr. Dolittle as well, and that was based off of a book series called excuse me one second, I am looking up the title. I believe it's called The Many Adventures of Dr. Dolittle. Just one second. The Voyages of Dr. Dolittle by Hugh Lofting. And it literally talks about all the wonderful worlds and all the wonderful animals that Dr. Dolittle runs into when he goes on these fantastic voyages. Obviously, he goes to it's written back in the old days. I believe the book was originally released in the 1920s, so a lot of the stuff that was going on around the time was not updated. As I listened to the book, there was an actual part in the book that kind of threw me off. It was this supposed part of the story where an African prince wanted to be a white male because he fell in love with a white female, and he felt that the only way that he would ever gain her interest was by becoming a white man. Which kind of threw me off, because as I listened to the story, the Dr. Dolittle and the animals that he speaks to refer to this black prince as the N-word, and it threw me off. I was like, am I listening to this right? Isn't this a kid book? It left me speechless, but I listened to the whole. It's like maybe 7 or 8 books. They're short stories, so I took my time listening to the whole thing. And yes, a lot of the movie Dolittle with Robert Downey Jr., not the one with Eddie Murphy. That one was a comedy. It was mostly improv, pretty much, the script and all that stuff. And then they made Dr. Dolittle 2 with Eddie Murphy, and then after that they made a whole series of movies. But they followed his daughters, because supposedly his daughters also had the gift of talking to animals. So yeah, so obviously they wanted to make this into a fantastical movie based on the actual book, and they got Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Downey Jr. Did a pretty good job at being Dolittle, but the movie was still a flop. It wasn't that good. They could have done a whole lot better, but they didn't. I'm here to talk about the book, and the book just pretty much rolls up whatever you saw in the film of Dolittle. It just took so many different pieces. Dr. Dolittle goes on this fantastic voyages, just visiting all these different worlds like Africa and Europe, all different places, trying to solve sicknesses and helping people left and right and all that stuff. Finally, the animals, there's a couple of animals that decide to stay in Africa because in Africa. Their ancestors are there, and then they end up that's at the end of one book, and then then the start of the next one they come back, and then he starts to learn about all these different cultures and stuff. So I mean, the many voyages of Dr. Dolittle were very interesting. It was written in a time where all the segregation and racial stuff was going on. So yeah, if you're interested, if you I don't know if this would be a kid's book. I don't know if you're fine reading these type of books to your children, especially when it comes to like being racial. But that's how the times were. So I'm assuming that's what the writer Hugh Lofting decided to put in it. So this is pretty much a little synopsis of who Dr. John Dolittle is the central character of a series of children's books by Hugh Lofting, starting with the 1920s, The Story of Dr. Dolittle. He is a physician who shuns human patients in favor of animals, with whom he can speak in their own language. He later becomes a naturalist, using his abilities to speak with animals to better understand nature and history of the world. So, yeah, he's been portrayed in a film in 1967 by Rex Harrison. Then in 1998, all the way up to 2001, it was by Eddie Murphy and now Robert Downey Jr. in 2020. At one point, he was voiced by Bob Holt, if you know who any of these people are. And yeah, it's, relatives, Dr. Dolittle first appeared in the author's illustrated letters to his children, written from the trenches during World War One. So yeah, obviously, since it was written in the World War One times, racial times were pretty much going on around that time. When actual news, he later said, was either too horrible or too dull. The stories are set in an early Victorian England, where Dr. John Dolittle lives in the fictional English village of Puddleby on the Marsh, on the West Country. Dr. Dolittle has a few close friends, including Tommy Stubbins and Matthew Mugg, the cat's meat man. The animal team includes Polynesia, who is a parrot, Gub Gub, a pig, Jip, a dog, Dab Dab, a goose, Chi Chi, a monkey, Tutu, an owl, and Push Me Pull You, and a white, later named simply Whitey. So yeah, it's children's books. It's a children's series, but there's certain things that I don't agree that should be read to your children. So if you are interested in reading this to your children, make sure you cover up those words. Okay, that's one of my books that I read or that I listened to the audio this past month, getting myself ready for Dolittle. I wouldn't say it's a great novel. It wasn't that interesting. It was kind of boring. But I wouldn't say it was bad because I've read worse. But yeah, that's been Dolittle. Guess I won't give it 2 thumbs up or 2 thumbs down. I'll just give it a okay. The next book that I would like to talk about is called The Turn of the Screw, written by the author Henry James. This book was written back in 1898. It was a horror novella that first appeared in serial format in Collier's Weekly magazine. In October 1898, it appeared in The Two Magics, a book published by Macmillan in New York City and Heinemann in London, classified both gothic fiction and ghost story. The novella focuses on a governess who, caring for 2 children at a remote estate, becomes convinced that the grounds are haunted. In the century following its publication, The Turn of the Screw became a cornerstone text of academics who subscribed to new criticism. The novella has been differing interpretations, often mutually exclusive. Many critics have tried to determine the exact nature of the evil hinted at by the story. However, others have argued that the brilliance of the novella results from its ability to create an intimate sense of confusion and suspense within the reader. The novella has been adapted numerous times in radio drama, film, stage, and television, including the 1950 Broadway play and the 1961 from film The Innocents. All right, that's pretty much a little synopsis of the actual book. Now, when I saw the Turning, the trailer for the movie The Turning, starring Finn Wolfhard and what was her name, Mackenzie. Oh my god, I forgot her last name. I'll put the name up here somewhere. But she was from Terminator. The movie was supposedly a ghost story. So I mean, I saw the trailer. I was interested in it, and I started doing some research on it, and I found out that it was based on a book called The Turn of the Screw. So I decided this is 1898. Those books back in those days just don't seem too appealing. Maybe some of them, like books like from William Shakespeare, those are actually interesting, that catch my eye. But I don't know, I just didn't feel like this one was going to catch my ear, pretty much. So I decided to listen to the audio. Thank goodness that I didn't get the book, because I would have been dull and boring, just like the synopsis says, that they were pretty much considered as dull and boring. It was a lot of talking, a lot of explaining of certain things, and even though this is supposedly a ghost story, it didn't feel like a ghost story. I mean, at least they didn't explain, or they didn't give you an explanation of how the ghosts look or how they appeared or whatever the case. So to me, it was just too much of too much. And just like I was really prepared when I saw the movie. The movie was more of a modern take of the novel. You get to see the little hints here and there of these characters from the original book. But just like the book ended so suddenly and without pretty much a real ending, that's how the movie ended. The movie gave you two endings, and it was just, to me, very, very dull and boring. That's pretty much the only thing I can tell you. I give this book 2 thumbs down. Henry James, back in 1998, I'm pretty sure he was like a scholar or some kind of a genius, but it's just, it wasn't my cup of tea. I really like books that are. I'm a big sci-fi fanatic when it comes to books. I like books that explain. I like war. I like all that stuff. I have read certain books. I've been trying to get into. Recently I've gotten into the whole the Stephen King type books. Those are pretty interesting. But as far as this goes, this wasn't scary one bit, as well as the movie. The movie was pretty dull and boring, and it's just bad. But yep, that's my whole review on The Turning of the Screw. Well, welcome back. My next series of books, or book series, there I say, is by a well-known, well, if you're within the reading or the library or reading book world, then you might know who this author is. She lived in she lived from July 1866 to December 22, 1943. So she had a pretty long life. Her name was Beatrix Potter. They did a movie about her with what's her name, Renee Zellweger, called Miss Potter, something like that, which I always thought was Harry Potter's mom or something. I don't know why I wanted that to be so bad. I wanted that to be part of the Harry Potter world, but I never actually saw the movie. So she was not only an English writer, she was also an illustrator, a natural scientist, and a conservationist. I'm sorry. Best known for her children's books featuring animals such as those in the Tale of Peter Rabbit. So obviously, not too long ago, I believe it was last year or 2 years ago, they came out with a movie called Peter Rabbit. And they were there. As a matter of fact, right now they're in the process of actually releasing Peter Rabbit Part 2. So I decided, you know what? I know the story of Peter Cottontail, or Rabbit, or Peter Rabbit, about his story about him going into a garden that he's not supposed to go to, and there's this specific man who goes after back and forth with him, whatever the case. So I never thought they would actually make a sequel. As a matter of fact, I've never seen the first film. So I'm like, you know what? Let me get prepared, because I know that the movie's going to come out eventually. I'm going to go watch it. So I decided to listen to the audiobook of, as well as the last book that I was talking about, The Turn of the Screw. I listened to the audiobook that. I listened to this audiobook. So I not only did I hear the tale of Peter Rabbit, but I listened to all the stories from Beatrix Potter, which the second tale is the tale of Squirrel Nuckin, the tale of Gloucester, the tale of Benjamin Bunny, the tale of Two Bad Mice, the tale of Miss Tiggy Winkle, the tale of Pie and Patty Pet, and there's many, 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 many more. And they all deal with animals and all these little situations they have to overcome. It's a great series for kids. I like reading certain books, like if you see right here, that's my Winnie the Pooh, the original tales of Winnie the Pooh. And like a lot of kids like this type of stuff. I grew up on Winnie the Pooh. I grew up on certain tales. That's why I like to read them over, so I can see the history behind it. I'm very, very in tune with looking at how things came to be and how they were at the beginning. So the tale of the tale of Peter Rabbit and all the books of Beatrix Potter, I give it a 2 thumbs up, especially if you're a parent and you want to find something easy, some easy reading for your kids, or if you want to read with your kids along, then the tale of Peter Rabbit or the Beatrix Potter books are a great choice. From 1866, people are still listening, to these books or reading these books. They just released Peter Rabbit, the movie, and now they're working on a part 2, which is coming out soon this year. So that's my whole review on Beatrix Potter's The Tale of Peter Rabbit and the other series. 2 thumbs up. Enjoy. And now for my final book that I am reviewing today. It is the story of Hansel and Gretel. So many of us know this story. Ever since we were kids, we know about 2 kids who go off to the woods. They meet this witch, and the witch tries to eat them and all that stuff. Let me give you a brief synopsis of Hansel and Gretel. This story, also known as Hansel and Gretel, Hansel and Gretel, or little brother and little sister, is a well-known German fairy tale recorded by the Brothers Grimm and published in 1812. So most of the books that I'm talking about today are old books, okay? Hansel and Gretel are a young brother and sister kidnapped by the cannibalistic witch, living in a forest in a house constructed of gingerbread, cake, confection, candy, and many other treats. The 2 children escape with their lives by outwitting her. The tale has been adapted in various media, most notably the opera Hansel and Gretel in 1893 and by Engelbert Humperdinck. Hansel and Gretel is classified under Class 327A of the Arne Thompson classification system. A similar fairy tale from Hungary is called Sir Uska. All right, mainly the reason why I decided to listen to this audio was because of the new movie that came out not too long ago, the horror movie that just came out called Gretel and Hansel, which is pretty much a reverse on that story. Gretel and Hansel, Hansel and Gretel was a boy and a girl who are pretty much around the same age, and the parents can't afford to take care of them, so they decide to leave them off in the woods to get rid of them. Unfortunately, Hansel sees that something's up. He leaves breadcrumbs and rocks and all this other stuff just to get back. Unfortunately, when he does leave the breadcrumbs, birds eat it and they literally get lost in the woods. They end up finding this gingerbread house that they end up eating because they're starving. And this witch, who is this woman at the time, cons him into coming in and eating food, and then finally, trying to kill them and eat them. because she's a witch. They end up outwitting her by dropping her into an oven, burning her, and they escape. The movie was nothing like that. I mean, it did have pieces of it, but it was more of a darker tale where Gretel is an older girl. Hansel was little. They were banned. The mother wanted her to go find a job because they were going broke. And the job that she was going to get, it was through a pervert who wanted to molest her and do stuff for her, do stuff to her. So they end up she ends up running away with her brother. They get lost in the woods trying to find some kind of shelter. They find out that there's mystical beings or mystical creatures out in these woods, and eventually they find the gingerbread house, which is not really a gingerbread house. It's just a house, a normal house that smells really, really, whatever it's coming from inside the house smells really, really good. They find out that there's this kind old lady that lives in there who turns out to be a witch, a shape-shifting witch, and she kidnaps the boy and tries to make Gretel into a witch or her predecessor or the person that's going to come next. So I don't want to get too much into it because it's the movie was not great, but it wasn't bad. I love the soundtrack. The book was kind of like, the movie was kind of like an inspiration off the book, but they wanted to make it a little more darker. The book, obviously, if you are an American person, you've probably read this book. Yeah, it was written by the Brothers Grimm, who are well known for their stories, their childlike horror stories. And it was a good audiobook. Right now, it was a good audiobook. That's pretty much, I could give you 2 thumbs up about it. If you are a parent and want to scare your kids, not really scare them, but this is one of those stories to get your children in line to act right, then you can read it to them. It's I guess 2 thumbs up for you. And that's pretty much it. And that's pretty much it for Dave's book report for this episode. I am in the process of reading 2 books. I still haven't finished Little Women. I'm halfway through, and I'm also in the process of finishing up the rhythm section, which I'm also listening to the audiobook on that. I'm actually reading the Little Women book, but the rhythm section just seemed very, very dull. I was getting ready to go see the movie. I saw the movie. Book is way better than the movie, but I will be giving you guys a synopsis or a book report on those specific novels when I get to that episode, which will be episode 5 when I finish with the books. So this has been Dave's book report. If you like my my video, hit the like button, subscribe, let me know, drop a message. Let me know if you like this page. If not so, then I'm sorry. I'll try to bring better content to you guys on the next time. And this has been Dave D. Saint for Dave's book report. Check you later.